Welcome to Xi Jinping briefing. The content of the briefing includes: who's to blame for Australia's big new security nightmare? Our closest ally. Could China miss its GDP growth target in 2024? Security is still China's top priority, not the economy. Xi's one-man rule over China's economy is sparking trouble. Vietnam's secret document warns of hostile forces. Who's to blame for Australia's big new security nightmare? Our closest ally. The Sydney Morning Herald. The United States' political dysfunction is worsening Australia's security situation in the Pacific region, according to Anne Hyland, a senior correspondent for the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Australia has strategic partnerships with the Marshall Islands, Palau and the Federated States of Micronesia, but there is a growing row between those nations and the U.S. The Pacific countries say the U.S. is pushing them into the arms of China. The U.S. has a treaty with the three countries which guarantees the U.S. exclusive military access to their territories and surrounding waters. Could China miss its GDP growth target in 2024? Deutsche Welle. China may struggle to achieve its economic growth target this year, with many experts arguing that it will be much more difficult for the country to surpass or even meet a 5% economic target. China's economic recovery has been weaker than expected and the country is facing a number of challenges, from the indebted property industry to risks of deflation caused by weak domestic demand. Furthermore, official figures from China's Communist Party are said to fail to reflect reality, with growth in 2022 being negative and growth in 2023 being less than 1%. Security is still China's top priority, not the economy. Nikkei Asia. China's focus on security under President Xi Jinping will continue to weigh on economic growth, according to Diana Koileva, founder and chief economist of Inodo Economics. While she has emphasized security as a means to ensure the Communist Party's hold on power, this focus has also hindered economic development. China's most innovative companies are facing increased regulatory scrutiny, private entrepreneurs are depressed, and foreign investors are leaving the country. China's economy is also being hampered by bad debt, overcapacity, and cautious consumers. Koileva expects the NPC session to prioritize security over growth. Xi's one-man rule over China's economy is sparking trouble. The Sydney Morning Herald. Chinese President Xi Jinping's efforts to shift China's economy towards a more sustainable model are facing resistance from the nation's citizens. Economic demonstrations have remained elevated since August, with many focused on labor disputes. The discontent comes as the world's second-largest economy undergoes a prolonged slowdown, and as foreign investors turn away from China. Xi's decision to delay the third plenum, where top officials meet every 5 years to map out the country's long-term policy direction, has added to the opacity. While the leadership in Beijing appears to be confident in its plan to reorient the economy, the discontent threatens to exacerbate weakened confidence as consumer prices drop at the fastest pace since the global financial crisis. Vietnam's secret document warns of hostile forces. BBC. Vietnam's ruling Communist Party has issued a leaked internal document that warns of the threat posed to national security by hostile and reactionary forces brought into the country through its growing international ties. The document, known as Directive 24, urges party officials to counter these influences and warns of a latent risk of foreign dependence and manipulation. The document has been interpreted by human rights activists as an indication of a harsher campaign against civil society groups and human rights activists. However, some experts argue that the directive is not a signal of a new wave of repression, but rather a continuation of the party's existing policies. They suggest that the directive was intended to reassure hardliners within the party who feared that closer ties with the U.S. would encourage pro-democracy sentiment in Vietnam. The directive highlights the dilemma faced by Vietnam's leaders as the country becomes a global manufacturing and trading powerhouse. Vietnam needs foreign investment and technology to sustain its economic growth, but it is reluctant to honor human and labor rights clauses in free trade agreements. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your trusted observer from the 6 Degrees world. Today, we have a range of interesting news stories that shed light on the complex dynamics at play in the Asia-Pacific region. Let's dive in. First up, we have a rather surprising revelation from the Sydney Morning Herald. It seems that our closest ally, the United States, is inadvertently worsening Australia's security situation in the Pacific. The U.S.'s actions are pushing Pacific countries like the Marshall Islands, Palau, and the Federated States of Micronesia into the arms of China. This unexpected turn of events highlights the delicate balance of power in the region. Moving on, we turn our attention to China. Deutsche Welle reports that China may struggle to achieve its GDP growth target for this year. The country's economic recovery has been weaker than expected, and it is facing various challenges, including a troubled property industry and weak domestic demand. It also seems that China's official figures may not accurately reflect the reality of its economic situation. Could this be a cause for concern? But wait, there's more. Nikkei Asia informs us that China's focus on security under President Xi Jinping is hampering its economic growth. While security is undoubtedly important, it seems to be coming at the expense of economic development. Increased regulatory scrutiny, depressed private entrepreneurs, and cautious foreign investors are all contributing to China's economic challenges. It appears that China's leadership is prioritizing security over growth. Now, let's turn our attention to President Xi Jinping's efforts to reshape China's economy. The Sydney Morning Herald reveals that his push towards a more sustainable model is facing resistance from the country's citizens. Economic demonstrations have been on the rise, and foreign investors are turning away from China. Furthermore, the decision to delay the third plenum, a key policy-making event, has added to the uncertainty. It seems that Xi's plans are facing headwinds, and the discontent among the people could further erode confidence in the economy. Lastly, we have an interesting development in Vietnam. The BBC reports that Vietnam's ruling Communist Party has issued an internal document warning of the threat posed by hostile and reactionary forces through the country's growing international ties. This document, known as Directive 24, highlights the dilemma faced by Vietnam's leaders. While they need foreign investment and technology for economic growth, they are reluctant to honor human and labor rights clauses in free trade agreements. This delicate balancing act is a challenge for Vietnam as it strives to become a global powerhouse. In conclusion, these news stories paint a complex picture of the Asia-Pacific region. The United States' actions are unintentionally pushing countries towards China. China's economic growth is facing hurdles, President Xi's economic plans are meeting resistance, and Vietnam is grappling with the challenges of economic growth and political stability. It's a fascinating time to be an observer of international affairs. Now, I turn the floor over to you, dear viewers. What are your thoughts on these developments? Do you have any questions for me? Let's discuss. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.